To resist is to exist.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yes.
And it's very colorful. To resist is to exist. It's a very colorful notion.
Today, in Baobab, Redwood and Neem, we talk to two members of the South African band, the Mavrix, which began its journey in the Apartheid South Africa. Keep tuned in for this program, which inspires hope and the will to act on it. We are happy to have Jeremy Karodia and Ayub Mayet in our show today.
Now, my first question to you guys is how do you define yourselves?
First and foremost, I would think we essentially South African. We would like to think we're of this soil. Everything we produce is emerges from the struggles, from the socio-economy of the past through which South Africa has come through, and our place in the world, which has informed our place in the world as to what we feel we need to comment on. Hence, in our albums, we speak about women and child abuse, we speak about drug addiction, and mainly the struggles of oppressed people around the world.
As Ayub was saying, earlier, I just want to add on to that. We are South Africans. Our family lineage and descendants may come from India. So we have adopted part of that culture, and we've also adopted mainly our South African culture. So there's a bit of a fusion, so to speak, of the kind of people that we are. But first and foremost, we are African. We're born on the continent of Africa, in Southern Africa, and that's who we are. That's where we come from.
Your music does show that fusion.
This is love. It's the way that we breathe. This is life. This is love. It's the way that we feel. This is life. This is love. It's the notes that we sing. This is life. This is love. It's in every living thing. Oh, this is life. This is life. It's the way that we breathe. This is life. This is love. It's the way that we feel. This is life. This is life. It's the notes that we sing. This is life. This is life. It's in every living thing.
I would like to ask you how apartheid influenced you as musicians, whether it had something to do with the kind of songs you do, or whether it was something that added on to what you were already doing.
It was a journey.
It was a journey.
Certainly, I didn't start out as a musician. Jeremy's political influences are far stronger than mine. But growing up in this country forces you to confront the realities of racial discrimination, class distinction, gender inequality, all of that. And when one starts asking questions, and you realize that the conventional narrative is not quite true, then you're forced to confront yourself and how to develop as an individual in a society, in a community, in a country.
You know, it's an evolution.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, I started music when I was 13 or 14. I came out of a community that was highly racist, highly, very influential, rich. And the area that we were brought up in was very racist, and we looked down upon people, you know. But I had been involved in music, and some of my mentors in music that taught me, and some of the elder people, youngsters that came away from studying in England, you know, at the time, they were politicized there. And when they came, they made me realize that, you know, this attitude that I had about being racist towards members in my own community and the outside, you know, towards people of different color, kind of didn't gel with the kind of makeup that constituted us. Although we were under apartheid, we were also as middle class Indians, so to speak. We were classified as Indians,
Exactly.
although we were South Africans.
Exactly.
That we were of the merchant class, and therefore we had the right. We had certain rights under apartheid. So people couldn't just buy land in white-owned areas, but certain merchant class of Indians that were brought by the British to South Africa were allowed, and my family has been a part of that. You know, we come with our own set of bigotry. You know, I know that a lot of people that came from India looked down upon African people, especially the merchant class Indians that came. Although they were very strong in the struggle eventually, you know, in South Africa, but we did have these prejudices. And apartheid did influence me in that sense, but I was also taught by members of my community, because there were serious active members in the community, some who died, you know, in their struggle against apartheid. And then there was this friction within me. So I then started thinking about who I am as a human being, or what my belief system is, and what I was taught, you know, that humanity is of the utmost importance, and how do I interpret that in what I wanted to do, which was music. You know, I knew I wanted to do music when I was 15. That's what I really wanted to do. But there was this contradiction. So do you just sing about rock and roll and, you know, sex, drugs and rock and roll, or do you make an impact on another level through my music?
You are referring to the various classes of people even within the so-called Indian South African community, and not necessarily the divisions of race in terms of black, white, brown, and so on. Would you like to talk a little bit about it, Ayub, growing up here?
Yeah. Well, from understanding history, we know that the first ship that came from India was called the Truro, right? That docked in Durban, and that was laden with endangered labor. A lot of that is covered in Avitab Ghosh's book, A Sea of Poppies. Those laborers who came into South Africa were essentially meant to work on the sugarcane fields, right? Behind them came the merchant class, right? And if what I'm told is correct, my grandfather was part of the group that marched from Natal into the old Transvaal then, because Transvaal did not allow anyone other than white people.
Okay.
You see, and they spent time in jail together. They spent time with Gandhi in jail. But essentially, the Indian community, from as is in India, so is in South Africa, wasn't and hasn't been monolithic, right? There's always been contradictions, the haves, the have-nots, the so-called bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie, the working class. So I mean, we're using classical Marxist
That's totally okay. Yeah.
terminology here, but that's the reality. And yes, with all of that went the attendant prejudice. Right, so people looked down on people who worked in the fields. People looked down on your laborer in the garden, or the person who cooked for you, or and then later on, of course, as the Indian community consolidated and became wealthier, right? The people who took over the more menial jobs were African people,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore the discrimination was as bad, even worse, for that matter.
So, and I would like to go on to this question now of whether you think musicians can be political. I mean, obviously from your example I can say yes, but I would like you to talk about it. Politics and music, do they go together? Can they go together?
They can go together, I think, but I just want to take a step back because you alluded to something and I just want to touch on that.
Mm-hmm.
You said our music transcends boundaries, and it's true. Ayub had mentioned it. We talk about various issues in our music. The Mavrix have been together since 1984. Initially, when Ayub and I got together, it was at the height of just before we had a state of emergency in South Africa, and we were performing political songs against apartheid, specifically at that time, because it was a very real issue in our faces. But I think we came from a period before that, because Ayub was in drama, I was in music, and we were in the resistance struggle as youth, growing into our adulthood. But for myself, and I think I'd speak for Ayub as well, I think before we say politics before music or vice versa, for me, it's that my inner self is focused on what I see the world as. So if I don't have compassion, if I don't have mercy, if I don't have love, if I don't have a conscience, then I can't write the kind of songs that we perform. So it starts for me, it starts firstly internally with myself and the kind of human being I think that I am, or that I was brought up to be, or evolved into. But without that conscience in myself, I couldn't do this kind of music. And once I realized that, okay, at that time it was apartheid, and after 1994, when we had our first democratic election, then we kind of dissipated for a while. We stopped, we went our
You were
different
celebrating,
ways. We were celebrating for many years.
I was married, he was married,
And we got
Lots
back,
of celebrations, that's
and
good.
we got back only in 2002 or 2001 when we did our first album, and then
What made you come back?
well, I think we went
World
our
events.
different ways, and then the world events. I mean, there was the whole thing on Iraq, Afghanistan, the US invasion, and their so-called coalition with other countries. The first album, Guantanamo Bay, for us as the Mavrix, was very pertinent because we had a very parallel recent history about our own Guantanamo Bay, which was called Robben Island.
Yes.
And when we heard about Guantanamo Bay the first time, that people were rendered there and tortured and nobody knew. It wasn't highlighted, it wasn't public knowledge at the time. And for us it was a very important thing because Nelson Mandela, Ahmed Kathrada, Walter Sisulu, the hierarchy of the liberation movements in this country were all incarcerated at Robben Island. So for us it was a very real, recent history. And Guantanamo Bay was very real for us. So we felt that we needed to kind of write about this.
Since you're mentioning this, let's actually play a clip of Guantanamo Bay.
Seeing faces imprisoned in darkness, and we all remain guilty in our ignorance. I can see the ghost, on Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay. I can hear the ghost, on Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay. I can feel the ghost, on Guantanamo Bay. Do you know the ghost, on Guantanamo Bay? Guantanamo Bay. Can you see the ghost, on Guantanamo Bay? Guantanamo Bay. Can you hear?
That was the Mavrix, and we have two musicians from the group with us today. We are so honored. I would like to continue the discussion about politics and art, in this case specifically music, poetry and music. I do want to say that over the years working on peace issues, I am often asked this question, that like if you're a singer or if you are a musician or a painter, how can you be political? Because it is after all art. Art should not be worried about these kind of things. Art is beautiful. Art has to be beautiful. It is for when I come home and I want to switch something on, it should be nice. I should like it. It should make me happy. I often wonder whether that perception is not really limited to those few people I meet. I think a lot of people have that perception about what artists should be doing. They should be apolitical.
I think in an ideal world, yeah.
Okay.
In a utopia, we would be, yes, we can sing about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees.
Yes.
And I think that for an artist involved in culture, however one might want to define culture, but culture is a reflection of your society, right?
Yeah.
In your music, in your art, you reflect what you experience, and I think that for artists who as John Lennon once said, only sing silly love songs, is a betrayal of reality, is a betrayal of people who are oppressed, is a betrayal of people who are who suffer indignity on a daily basis, caused by other people who exercise power. Unfortunately, the world is defined by power relations. That is fundamental to how the world turns. And if we're going to rap and sing silly love songs and just paint beautiful landscapes and lovely pink trees, we lose ourselves. We lose something of ourselves.
So I guess it is when I worked with a lot of theatre groups, and we were always told, this is a thinking actor as opposed to somebody who's not a thinking actor. And I feel that the thinking actor was probably more aware of what went into the script in terms of the historical facts, the politics,
Exactly.
and so on. And I personally always found the thinking actor a more powerful actor than somebody who was just told to do whatever they were supposed to do. That is my personal view. I mean, people may have a different view. And I think music gets only sharper, more beautiful if you actually know what you're doing, I mean, you're not just writing poetry because you want to write these 6 lines about love, but because you actually feel the love, and it will come out better.
You see, in my opinion, it would be nice to arrive at that situation when we're doing, when we only sing, when we are at some kind of equilibrium on this earth as human beings, when each one is living according to their needs, but we're not.
We're not there yet.
And to arrive at a situation where there's universal peace, we have to go through a process of universal, or not even universal, it's resistance.
It's resistance.
Yes, well, I mean, art is expression. That's the fundamental thing behind art. It's about expression. So whether earlier you said it would be nice to just listen to a love song, or Ayub said in an ideal world. And there's nothing wrong with that, because whoever wrote whatever they wrote, and whoever listens to it, it's an engagement between the listener and the artist. And there's some kind of interaction going on. And, we write love songs, and we could write you not 6 lines of beautiful poetry, we could write you an epitaph of poetry. But for me, it's about the final expression. I mean, what are we trying to express when we write music? for me, art and music specifically, as musicians, you know, there's a beautiful, mysterious, mythical enigma to it. So, you know, if you want to consider it a tool, you want to consider it a form of education, then so be it. But we write, firstly, as human beings. Within ourselves, we have compassion, we have a passion for our art, and we write about things that we see that is relevant in society today, both for young, old, and people our age. But
so something tugs here, something tells
it has
you.
to start. It has to start within yourself.
Yes.
But if we write a song that people can engage with,
Yes.
can listen to it and appreciate,
Yes.
and if that's considered a political tool or educational tool, then so be it. Point in an ideal world,
Yeah.
we'd be able to write the kind of, you know, $10 million love song. We could still do that now, but it goes against my principles, and I think it
Would
certainly
you-
goes against Ayub's principles. I don't know. That's who we've been, who we've evolved into.
Yes.
It would be really nice to make $10 million.
I'm sure.
But
At Peace Vigil, we think that peace is the responsibility of every one of us. And some of us are very good at writing songs. And if we can contribute in some way to make sure that justice happens so that peace is established, I think that's beautiful. That is as beautiful as love. I think we are making sure that the future generations can write poetry about love. Because if there's going to be peace, there's going to be poetry about love. Right?
well, why isn't there? I mean, love is a struggle, right?
Yes.
You know, love is beautiful, but it's also a form of struggle. You get from a point to a point. It's the journey. You know, it's not necessarily for me the destiny. It's the journey that's important. The destiny is just as important, but the journey that we take determines where we're going to end up.
As you were chatting there, and I think both of us try and not to be typecast. We try not to be stereotypical.
Yes.
So we're not just a lefty band who sings political songs.
Yes.
We can sing a song like Vulindlela. Vulindlela in Zulu means open the way, right? It's quite spiritual in a
Yes,
sense.
yes.
And when people heard us sing that song, they thought it was a gospel song. You know? That was off the first album, Guantanamo Bay. In the second album, we have a song called Green, and that was like a pretty spiritual song, I think. And that is our tribute to the earth. You know,
I agree, and I also feel that a lot of the times people try to separate spirituality from political struggle. You know, it is a big mistake. A lot of the very spiritual stuff that has happened in recent years is around politics. You know, political people can be spiritual and vice versa. So there's, to me, there is no contradiction there. Would you like to share a bit of poetry? Ayub writes beautifully.
Well, can I make a suggestion?
Yes, Jeremy.
Ayub, Predator's Paradise.
Predator's Paradise. Okay, the next poem or song, or rap as some people would call it, rhythm and poetry.
Yes.
We did as a result of Jeremy cajoling me to write something about state capture. Now, state capture is a phenomenon that is worldwide. Most countries, powerful business people seek to capture the political system for their own benefit, and it certainly happened in this country over the past 10 years, with a powerful family who came from India who captured our state institutions for their own benefit. We then wrote a song called Predator's Paradise.
Okay.
And that is what I'm going to do here now. We emerged from the darkness, bloodied and unbowed, courageous and uncowed, leaving behind the colonial cloud. We raised the rainbow standard proud.
And in our creed, the people shall govern. We stormed the gates of heaven. For once, just once, the guns lay silent, war drums dormant. Forgive the torment, leaving behind all that went. We had a dream, we dared to dream, to live the dream, to bask in the sunbeam, smile back with a gleam. When the trophy came home, 12 to 15, a year later, when Williams was thrown into the mix, he scored once, he scored twice, with Madiba magic just for kicks. What a year that was, 1996.
Oh mama, alala mama, Malibu, Africa.
The dead lay still on a copy at Marikana, rattling the rhythm, rattling the rhyme. The Saxon Sahara governance by slime. Strange men creep like KPMG and Bell Pottinger. They steal the smiles and the rapture. We become prey to an insidious predator. We didn't see the dark clouds gather until it was here. State capture. Once more, we are at the crossroads of history. We rise to defy those who desecrate the legacy of Sisulu, Mandela, Kathrada, and Hani. This will not be another oligarchy. That is the challenge of our age. Do not contain your rage. Burn the bridge to patronage. In the name of Nelson Mandela, Aluta continua, Matla Chiarona, Maibu ye Africa, Maibu ye Africa, Maibu ye Africa.
Thank you, Ayub. That was great. And I could see the actor in you coming out. So it's not just the poet, but the actor. Full performance here. You know, I do know that you, as you were referring to earlier, cover a number of subjects when you write your songs and you perform. And environment is definitely one of the things that we should all be fighting to preserve.
Yes, we pursue a song at the moment. It's called Seed.
Seed.
And it's about genetically modified seeds, which has been for the last 15, 20 years having an impact on all developing countries and serious impact on the environment. So we know, for example, bees. The bees colony collapse syndrome.
Yes.
Where bees normally, their life cycle is 6 weeks, they're collapsing within 3-4 weeks. And that's because they're feeding on seeds that have been dipped in pesticide, genetically modified seeds that have been dipped in pesticide, in tobacco pesticide. And these bees are collapsing. And once that starts to happen, it has repercussions that go on.
Oh yes. For the entire world.
So coming back to that question you said, it's not, so it's socio-political, environmental, economical kind of music that we do.
Yes.
And we also do songs on love.
Yes.
You know.
It's all related. As far as I'm concerned, as a peace educator, I find all of it is related. And I think that's what I was referring to as the function of art in a way. Is that if it is coming from your heart, it will make other people think. It will make other people act, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yes.
Well, it is one part of a longer worldwide universal struggle.
Yes.
As all other resistance.
Yes.
They say to resist is to exist.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's very colorful. To resist is to exist. It's a very colorful notion.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't matter where you come from. You could be middle class, you could be nouveau riche, you could be working class, you could be peasantry, you could be unemployed. But the thing is,
it will affect all of you.
It affects everyone.
Yes. So would you like to share that song? Yes.
So this song is called Seed. It's a song in progress. It's about the environment. And basically, it's trying to say that if we kill the seeds, we set the human race and the earth ablaze into extinction. I'm what I am. I am from a seed. I am in Nigeria, a thought that's unseen. I am the commonwealth, passed down through centuries. I am the light and shade that gives you sanctuary. The wind contrived to carry me to places cheapest in blue, and the raindrops came to bury me, to anchor my roots. And then in early spring I blossomed and grew, and out from the ground my fragrance covered you.
Thank you, Jeremy. When I talk to artists who are involved in social change through their art, I often look at their stories and find that there was something that led them to that kind of activism. Is there something in your life besides, of course, the whole atmosphere of apartheid talked about?
My grandfather had a store in a place called Asiatic Bazaar in Germiston, right?
Okay.
Now there was pretty stark, right? You had the Indian shops on one street, on First Street. Across a field, there was so-called colored people, and behind us was where African people would squat, right? It's near the railway lines, and as luck would have it, you meet in the middle to play football because that's what you want.
Yes.
Right?
So sport
And
united
it's like-
you.
No, exactly. There was that.
Yeah.
So it was a gradual build-up, but also in the way my aunties and my mother would relate to African people was completely different, right? Because they were customers, they were consumers of whatever they were selling. But the big change came at June 16th, 1976 for me.
Okay.
Right, that's when the questions started. And when you start discussing with other people, you suddenly realize the peculiarity of South Africa.
So why
Right.
that particular date? Can you tell our
It-
viewers?
I mean, that was the expression, that was the eruption of a bottled up grief, a bottled up oppression, a bottled up anger of youth that came out in that, and the spark was that the medium of instruction at African schools
Yes.
was going to be Afrikaans.
Yes.
Now that was the language of the oppressor, you see.
And in your video, you start with that. The black starts with a picture of
Hector
little kids.
Yes.
You know, the Hector Peterson Memorial. If people can, if they ever visit South Africa, they must visit that to understand,
Exactly.
you know, what it means.
Exactly.
This program, we cannot go into the details of it, but what you said about the medium of instruction,
Yes.
and that it was the oppressor's language and it was being forced upon people,
Mhm.
and that it erupted,
Yeah.
and very young people were killed. in it.
Exactly. Thousands of young people. I mean, and then the questions started emerging because you don't only look at it in terms of racial a racial definition, because essentially all black people are poor, all white people are rich. Why? Right? All black people are oppressed. They cannot be found in areas where they're not supposed to be. They're carrying passes, they're carrying passbooks, can be stopped at any point in time. And at any given instance, a young white policeman can be beating up a man as old as my father, you know, and he has all the right to do that. So all of those questions start playing on you, and then you read, and you discuss, and you talk, and you communicate. You find other activists or other people who know already. And by that time, you find out about people like Nelson Mandela, you find out about Ahmad Kathrada and Walter Sisulu and Joe Slovo, and you know there was an African National Congress that was banned, you know that there was a South African Communist Party that was banned, you know Nelson Mandela is in jail, you know Dr. Yusuf Dadoo is overseas, he's in exile, and then the questions, the more you question, the more answers you got, the more you realized, I can't live with myself in my little protected cocoon.
That's true.
Yeah, I was born and brought up by my grandparents. I was born on Becker Street in the center of Johannesburg, and I was brought up by my grandparents. My parents were living in England, and they left me with my grandparents. And a block away from my building and my balcony was the old notorious John Foster Square, which is now Johannesburg Station, police station.
Central Johannesburg.
Police station.
Yeah, but at that time it was the old John Foster Square. And it was highly notorious because political detainees were kept there. And they were notorious for the special branch, the security police, were notorious at that station for torture and throwing people out of buildings. And there were one close family member and a family friend. So the family member was Barbara Saluji. He was killed. I think it wasn't at Johannesburg. I think it was somewhere in the middle of town. It was a different police station. He was thrown down the stairs, tortured, beaten, and then one of the more famous ones, it became highlighted many years afterwards, was the case of Timon, the late Timon, who was a teacher at my school. And he was an activist, a political activist for the ANC, working underground, and they picked him up. And they had thrown him out from John Foster Square. And that's like kind of opposite the building. So it was very surreal.
So did you actually, you must have been quite young at that time.
I was young.
Yes.
That was my experience. So this was before 1976. That was my first real questioning experience.
It jarred you.
Because it jarred me because this is someone that we knew.
Mm-hmm.
We knew his family. And this thing happens in the middle of the day, and my family and the street is like absolutely quiet. Like we were not allowed to talk about this.
Mm.
But
Why was that?
because there was this fear.
Mm.
There was this fear. I mean, we're right opposite John Foster Square. And my family was involved with printing some of the banned literature
Okay.
at our business down around the corner. So it was taboo to talk about this
Yes.
because the street was absolutely,
You had to be quiet.
you had to be quiet because we didn't know who was reporting, who was working for the state, who, that kind of thing. But that was my first real experience, and when I questioned it, I was stubborn, cocky 12 or 13-year-old, and I wanted to know
What
happened.
Why?
I wanted to know, so I started questioning some of the older youth on my street corner, and they were giving me the information. That is how my first political, that was my first political juncture, I think. The understanding, okay, there's something bigger than the kind of life that I'm leading.
So, here I would like to ask you a question about youth in general. I think a lot of people have grown in relative, what you would say, stability, in the sense that they have not really experienced the kind of things that you experienced growing up. But as we know, fascism can sometimes come very slowly. You may not even notice the signs, especially if nothing bad is happening to you personally. In a lot of countries around the world, we are seeing rise of fascism. And for the youth to start questioning is important, I feel. Not only because it is important for society as a whole, but also because if they are going into this adulthood chained, it's going to be a disaster. I know we are all fearful, we all have fears, but is it important to speak? When you look back now, you could have been in grave trouble doing whatever you were doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that those are the choices we made. Those are the choices we made, having seen the reality, having realized what other people our age were going through and how hard it was just to exist day to day. And that was hard, and thinking, my goodness, I can go to school, I can go for training after school, I can play my football on a weekend, I can go to a club on a Saturday night and just dance.
Yes.
But other people don't have that kind of privilege. Why don't they have that kind of privilege? There are laws against them. There are their class situation determines where they live.
Do you think that a set of religious beliefs or values influences you as a musician?
I have taught at many different schools. I've taught at a Catholic school, I've taught at government schools, so-called Indian government schools in the time of Apartheid. And I do a lot of gospel recordings, producing gospel groups, Christian gospel groups. I record Islamic gospel groups, that's a cappella voice only. But for myself, my belief system is, I believe in a high power, and I can sit in any temple and I can read any religious book and I can find similarities. I don't look for the differences, I look for the similarities. Generally, the family had put the idea, sown the seeds of, compassion first.
Okay.
So, for me, like you spoke about peace and the peace virgil. For me, it's about peace ultimately. That would be the destiny. The journey for me is the social justice.
Social justice.
That goes
Without
with it.
justice, there cannot be
without
any
justice,
peace.
Yeah, I think so. I think the basis, the philosophy, the underlying philosophy that drives religion, the underlying, if you may call it, quest for a just society is all there within a religion, right? What has mangled all of that is human interpretation and human practice. So I would like to think that I am, for want of a better term, a human rights activist, is because of what I've learnt through my parents. Maybe not all what I've learnt in madrasa at the end of a cane, but I think I would like to think there is some of that, the justice that is present within Islam.
Yes.
That might have influenced me, and throughout my life, I mean, I've been so blessed to be able to perform with artists, with Christians, with Jews, with communists, and people of all races, and to be able to realize our one single holistic humanity, and that is fundamentally who we are.
Thank you, Ayub. Thank you, Jeremy. It was an honor talking to you both, and I look forward to hearing a lot more beautiful music coming out of you guys.
She consumes my soul. It don't matter